Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your.
Welcome to the 817 podcast, where we talk everything culture, business, politics in Tarrant County in the lovely city of Fort Worth. Happy that you're here with us, regardless if it's on Monday when we post it, or if you're like listening to this in your car, or you're just taking a walk with the dog on a random Thursday and Friday. Just welcome here. Jimmy, how are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year. Here we are, 2021. Yep. Feels a lot like 2020. I thought all my problems were going to go away.
I still got all those problems. It's absolutely true. And, it seemed, there was a lot going on around, I don't know if you saw these, the ambulance dealing a lot more with, people getting shot on New Year's. People just, shooting their gun up in the air. And then people actually, accidentally.
Yeah.
Someone in Arlington, he shot his girlfriend. I'm like, this is crazy. I was like, this is not the way you think you're going to end 2021, really, right? You're like, yeah, I'm ready for 2021. And you shot someone you love. Come on now.
There was something in West Meadowbrook. There was a shot that went through somebody's house that was just a random shot up in the air.
Oh, and you know what's crazy? My person who's working on my house just said, hey, I just want you to know there's it looks like you have a bullet hole through your roof. He's like, I think you need to fill it up. So maybe something happened that could be from this year or who knows what year, But hey, now I'm interested to ask him after this. But yeah, man. Well, we got a lot to talk about. I see a lot of exciting stuff. In the Sunday's paper, there was a big story around apartments and commercial real estate. I think we'll hold on that as I think a more exciting one to talk about is really Fort Worth and the environment and what that kind of means to us. A recent study just came out how 80%, a little bit over 80% of Texans are believe in climate change and obviously are pro climate change, willing to increase their bill from $1 to $5 to support climate change, and a lot of work there. But there's a crazy story that came out that I just thought we should start it out with as a really interesting story. And here's what it's all about. It's basically 15 years after officials first evaluated soil and groundwater contamination in Fort Worth Industrial's north side, the cleanup effort for the Panther Island Central City Flood Control Project entered the final stages, according to Tarrant Regional Water District. Now, here's what's up. I know this sounds crazy, but as a part of the cleanups, so Trinity River, we all know it's,
jank.
Yeah, it's bad. And
got them leeches in there.
Yeah. Who knows what else is in there? Listen to this. As a part of a $1.17 billion effort to prevent river flooding and revitalize downtown Fort Worth, the Water District has spent more than $43 million to clean up about 137 acres of contaminated with harmful chemicals in the North Side area. Now, the reason for this is because the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are looking to move ahead with a plan to build a 1.5-mile bypass channel and reroute part of the Trinity River. So it's pretty crazy. And what's crazy is just showing that this is something that's basically based off of us having a petroleum refinery in the 70s that really impacted our area in the north side. And now it took the water district department to actually make this happen. And we don't have, it's such an important move for Fort Worth. It seems like no one would ever talk about this, but I just think it's so crazy because if we didn't use the government, there's no commercial people in our area that can handle such a size of a problem.
Yeah. No commercial company is going to go throw $43 million to clean up a river.
Yeah.
It's if you're familiar with the Panther Island Project, the idea is to reroute the Trinity River to create a little island in downtown Fort Worth that would be called Panther Island, would be home to businesses, apartment complexes, parks. Is it something that the city has been working on for 15 or 18 years now? It's just sort of been putzing along as we've been trying to get funding for it. But to move forward, the Army Corps of Engineers, for them to be able to move forward, the river has to be clean, and they can't do their study to move the project forward until that happens. So this is a crucial step in the city being able to move forward with Panther Island plans, which we know that those bridges are slated to open in 2021, which is an exciting, long overdue thing. It's the numbers of how disgusting the Trinity River is in the north side of Fort Worth are astounding.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, Woody Frossard is the Water District Environment Director. And so basically he's dropping some gems of like data points saying just like 21 sites slated to remove more than 400,000 tons of contaminated soil. And he basically said that this is the largest single voluntary cleanup program in the state of Texas. And so it's a big, massive effort, and we should be, I mean, he goes on to say the cleanup tested 35 chemicals in the PFAS family and identified 2 that were above the levels allowed by Texas Commission on Environment Quality. He said, adding that the water district has contracted with the company that accepts PFAS materials and has a site designated for those types of waste. But those basically are materials that are like extremely dangerous for us to be around or to be in the air. And so, you know, this is just very interesting. And I mean, this came out on a random Tuesday, and it was a deep article, and I was like, wow, this seems something we should be more celebrating as we're starting to make more decisions around the environment.
440,000 tons of contaminated soil. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and even the number you said at the start of 80% of Texans believe in climate change, that's comforting, because I honestly, if you would have told me 80% of Texans don't believe in climate change, I wouldn't have thought that was crazy. So, but I think now, 50 years after this company in the 70s was able to just dump crap into the river with no regulation, we're seeing the outcome of that. And that points forward to 50 years from now. Like, what choices are we making now that are going to affect Fort Worth in 50 years? Are we going to allow people to keep dumping crap into the river? Obviously not, because there's regulation around that now, but we have to be making decisions that don't leave us having to spend $40 million cleaning up the river 50 years from now again.
Yeah. And this is why I think was one of the reasons we started the podcast, was just like, who are we wanting to be? And we clearly can see whatever we do today matters in decades of what Fort Worth becomes.
Yeah.
And so, keeping it on the environment game, another study came out on Saturday, the Saturday paper, around the Dallas-Fort Worth region has about 36 years before existing landfill fills up, says Tamara Cook, the Senior Program Manager of Environment and Development at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So in addition to like us, what are we going to do about our traffic? What are we going to do about, our areas that are contaminated? What are we going to do as the state of Texas around, laws around fracking and what we do in the future there? I mean, we are making some investments in wind, and that's, we're already becoming a leader there. And so I think this is crazy, like now being more conscious of how we expose future trash so that we don't contaminate the environment even more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this kind of bleeds into the article about development and about how many apartment complexes we're building, but they're looking 40, 45 years out at what growth is going to look like and how do we make sure we're building enough housing to accommodate that growth. We have to do the same thing with landfills. Like we have to make sure that we're creating the empty space for stuff like that to happen. Or how do we turn our attention towards better recycling practices? Like even growing up in Florida, we always had 2 separate recycle bins because there's different types of recycling, whether it's paper or plastic. Come out to Texas, it's like, some people don't even have a recycling thing in their house. You just throw all this stuff together. Like, don't really care what happens to it. You go to a more progressive or more environmentally focused place, and there's 5 different types of trash cans. How do we change the culture so that our landfill planning incorporates us having better recycling practices as well?
Yeah. And, I think even when there was recent kind of data around how only like 30-ish% of like the stuff that we actually put on our recycle bins is recyclable. Yeah. So a lot of a great example there is the plastic bags that we might use. You go to Target or whatever, and those plastic bags you might use for trash, you throw away recycles in them, and then you just throw that into the waste.
Yeah.
That is actually not recyclable. So someone has to like actually go in, rip that off, dump them once it gets to the site. So there's also just a lot of education that needs to happen around it, and how to do it properly. But yeah, no, I mean, and going into kind of what we talked about with the apartments. I mean, let's look at it. We have the environment around like our natural areas. We have how we handle the trash. We have people saying, hey, they want 80% of people say, hey, in Texas saying, hey, I'm for what we need to do to protect our climate. But then you go into like, as well as like, how do we build out? And how do we build up? And so this was just came out in the Sunday's paper. It was the front page of the Star Telegram. But it was basically around like, are we building too many apartments too fast? And I don't know what everyone's feeling is. I think everyone has a different opinion on this. I remember us talking to the team at Fort Worth Magazine around density and like what's the goal with the right density for our city. But the data here was that between October 1st, 2019 and September 30th, 2020, Fort Worth has permitted 484 new apartment buildings for a total of just under 7,000 new units citywide. So what's happening is there's just some city councils starting to bring this up like, hey, are we, it's not like, hey, we're anti development, but do we need to kind of lower the gas pedal in a way and start maybe going on a different pace? I don't know what your opinion is on this.
Yeah, I think we obviously need to be smart. Like, I'm thinking in this past year, how many apartment complexes in like Magnolia near Southside opened? There's the ones right across the street from Fixture. There's 2 new ones on Rosedale, right near Maine. There's those 2 like right behind Hop Fusion off of South Main, and all of these apartment complexes are like luxury apartments. Like, they're not affordable living, even if they may have a section of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And so, how many luxury apartment complexes do we need? Or how can we better plan for some of those apartment complexes to be accessible for people who need to find a studio for $400 instead of $750 or $800?
Yeah.
And 2 of those apartment complexes off of Rosedale, like if you're ever driving east on Rosedale right around, I mean, it really starts at like 3:30 in the afternoon towards 35, like that light to turn to get onto 35 gets backed up basically to Maine pretty quickly. And now we're adding, a couple thousand apartment units that are going to be in and out of still a same sized road right there. I mean, we have to plan. We don't want to end up in a situation like LA where there is a housing crisis.
And I would argue we're already I don't know. I would argue that, and that's the part that I'm worried about. Right. And, is I feel like I kind of already feel like we're in a housing crisis in a way, in the sense of you're going to have to we're moving further out. Like the options are going further away. And, I think it is hard. I mean, I even think, what's affordable today isn't affordable for most people.
Yeah.
Most people can't, buy kind of houses that are available and not, be 30% of their income.
Yeah.
And if 30% of your income is going to your home, then you're you're trapped in ever getting out to like live, you know, where you need to, or get the space and freedom to do what you want. And the other part is, like you said, these apartment complexes are expensive. I was living in West Magnolia in an apartment, and me and my wife was like, man, we should get a second, like a 2-bed, 1-bed, because we were living like a 600 square foot apartment, you know?
Yeah.
And, but then the rent was like $1,650 a month.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, at that case, I'd go get a mortgage, you know? And so that's what moved to. And that is what I think, like, I think our generation is constantly seen as people who, well, we don't want to own, or like we're okay with renting. And I just think that's, I don't know. I think that's, you can't compare us, you know, sharing music on Spotify and, you know, taking Ubers as the same way of like a home. And people who live in Texas, I feel like want to live in a home. Like we're known here for like land. We're known here for having space. And so I don't know. And that's kind of where where I'm at about it. I would love to live closer to the city, but you know, I feel like it's just really hard.
Yeah. I mean, my question is like, are any of these full or like close to full?
Yeah. They don't look like it at all.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like it. And obviously we're talking about planning ahead for the city. And so they're looking 40 years out at population growth and trying to project what we need. But that's where, like, a lot of North Fort Worth is really featured in the article in the Alliance area, because that's an area that's bringing a lot of warehousing jobs. And so people are moving here to live out there by work. They're not really familiar with the area, so they're just going to choose a place that's convenient for them to get to work. And how that's really changing. I mean, even we drove through like the Rock Island area recently, and that's just like radically changed in the last couple of years, with houses being torn down in favor of apartment complexes. Like that whole neighborhood is completely different.
Yeah.
But you still look and it's like there's not that many cars around here. Yeah. Like it seems like we are way ahead right now. And so maybe should be looking more so at curbing some of those requests to develop and instead make those hospitable areas for small businesses, restaurants, and that's retail to go into.
And that's the other part. Like, so the other concern here is, like, from an investment side, the places to make money is apartment complexes or big events. And what is Fort Worth doing really well right now? Putting up apartment complexes and keeping AT&T Stadium full. We're doing a really good job at doing those two things. Mm-hmm. But what makes a place where people want to live? Investing into the river, right? Investing in natural resources or natural walkway parks, and as well as cool restaurants and bars that maybe aren't money makers, but because they're not, they still make character. And it's almost like these long-term investments. I'm going to say it's like, you know, when you run a company and you invest money in the branding and marketing, you always wonder, like, oh, is it worth it? Am I actually making money back? But it's more of like, it's a long-term investment in the aura and the experience when people connect with who you are. And so it's not as direct as other investments you make in a business or a city. And I think the problem with real estate and city planning, we don't have a long-term play of, adding this park, adding this walkway. Yeah, it doesn't make money for us, but in the long term, it makes more and more people want to be here, so that this becomes a place, that people want to be. It's not as transactional. I think right now Fort Worth could unfortunately become very transactional, and the apartments make sense in a way, because I also understand that that's the healthcare area, and there's a lot of in and out doctors and people going to the residency and things like that. So I get that. But I don't know. I also think there's room for both.
Yeah. And that reminds me of a tweet I saw from Luke Ranker, who's a Star Telegram reporter, this week about, he said something to the effect of, like, the Race Street area would be really great if anywhere around there was also bike friendly. And I think that's another piece to what you're saying about parks, about making areas bike friendly, is Fort Worth has bike or pedestrian friendly areas, but they're all siloed. And so it's like, oh, I can get out and ride my bike for 2 minutes up this one street because it's bike friendly.
Yeah.
But if I try to keep going or try to get to the next bike friendly area, I'm riding on the road. Yeah. How do we create long-term city planning investments that allow Fort Worth's livability index to maybe bump up a little bit, because you do have parks, and make it more pedestrian friendly.
Yeah. And I think like, what's also like what to me about Ray Street, what's tough is like, it's a little bit of, hey, we're not really thinking about what makes culture. Like, isn't there like a Fuzzy's Taco or something crazy like that? It's like, come on, fam. Like, this is the example of like,
that's been there a while, though. That probably will have to live out its lease before it can join Tributary Cafe and the Post and those other great local
awesome.
places right there.
Yeah. And I think that's like, but those are things that it takes intentionality.
Yeah.
And if you got these outside people who just see Fort Worth as a city with a number that their Excel doc shows this is a place to invest in the next 10 years,
yep,
you're going to miss on that. And another part of this story that I also thought was interesting, and I mean, it's comparing two data points that, you know, I'm not sure if it's a fair pair, but they basically said there's just around 7,000 new units. So 7,000 new apartment units. During that same time, we have had 8,000 new residential units, which includes 6,377 single family homes. All right. So 6,377 single family homes actually being built. So you're at a 1-to-1 on for every new house, there's a new apartment room. So I don't know. So if you played that over for 10 years, that's a lot of people living in an apartment. And that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know what the current existence, what was data looking like before, like what percentage of people lives in homes. But I think still though, that kind of, that's kind of concerning to me, but not in a crazy way. But I think it's going to be interesting to see it playing out.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about who is moving to Fort Worth. And I don't know the answer to that. I think that the news just says California and walks away, because that like creates a good headline. But I think we do need to look closely at the last 5 years, see who is moving to Fort Worth, and to think about where they would be interested in living, because 1-to-1 is definitely not sustainable. Especially most of these houses are well outside of Fort Worth proper and are in, you know, the vast space that Fort Worth is. I don't see the need for more and more apartments. And I think that it drives us closer and closer to being a Dallas than it does having a unique identity as a city.
Yeah. And so something that's going to be cool is the assistant city manager, Dana Bergdorf, is going to brief the council with an analysis that's looking at Fort Worth population through 2045, and is going to share this data on February 9th. So I think that's going to be cool to see what comes from that. What are they forecasting? So, because I guess, you know, it's to address and them to have a conversation around our development plans and our commercial ventures. Because I mean, it also mentioned like the idea of like, with what's going on with the coronavirus and people not going to places, people are afraid to do restaurants. Mm-hmm. People are afraid to do grocery stores. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. I think what's cool, like I think about like, I know I always bring up Austin, but like I think what's cool about Austin is, yeah, you can replicate, you know, a Hot Dottie or whatever the heck they had down there before everyone else. But, you know, like at the end of the day, like Barton Springs and, you know, the lake and the river and all that part is, those are the things that are hard to duplicate. is providing those experiences. And to me, that's what makes Austin a place for everyone who wants to hang out, is that it does that really well. It's not, I mean, even if restaurants and all that like is second, but like, I think people want that experience to be able to have space, nature. Yeah. So, which I just think plays both stories that we were talking about, the environment and what we're doing with commercial real estate. They just go hand in hand. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. We'll follow up after November 9th, and we learn more information about
February. If I said November,
you said February. I don't know where November came from. That's a long way away.
Hey, like you said, we're still in 2020.
Yeah, we're moving backward. Yeah, technically it will be November because we're moving backwards through 2020 now. Yeah, we'll follow up after that city council meeting, and that we learn that information, and it'll be interesting to see how the council uses that moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I know, speaking of the council and the future, the other big part that's coming around is our local election.
Yeah.
Betsy Price, Mayor Betsy Price, there's talks of looking to explore a fifth kind of run to be mayor, which will be like the longest. I think it would be record breaking.
Yeah, I believe she's already at the record, or maybe she's tied for the record with 4 terms.
Yeah.
So the initial time to start filing, the initial time for campaign filing is January 12th. So we're expecting this week, maybe next week, to hear if she's planning on running. Deborah Peoples, who's the county Democratic chair, has said that she'll run for a while now, but in being interviewed for this article, she hedged her bets a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see who takes up the mantle there. Southside City Council woman Anzade said that it's fair to say that she's considering all options. Southwest Side Council member Brian Bird said, I'm in if Betsy Price doesn't run. It could be a crowded race, and that'll be really interesting. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I'm not sure. I guess I'm still dealing with the, hangover from the national election, and just kind of like allowing this kind of the waters to settle before I get really excited. I think locally seeing, you're talking, right? Betsy's 71, his Peoples is 65,
68,
like 68. Okay. And so, that's, so what with Fort Worth becoming very, a younger audience, and as well as, if we're going to ever have a Democratic mayor, I think you're going to have to really excite some people.
Yeah.
The diverse groups as well. So can you do that? Can you mobilize? Also, the local funding is usually very disproportionate, because Fort Worth is pretty ran by companies investing in the Republican candidates.
Yeah.
So how do whoever comes out on the Democrat side is going to have to figure out how to do more with less.
Yeah. And that's what makes, so the mayoral office is technically a nonpartisan position, and that does make things a little bit more interesting, because you could have multiple left-leaning candidates, multiple right-leaning candidates, multiple centrist candidates running, and it's hard to say where they're going to split votes, who's going to be able to garner support. To your point about age, so Brian Bird, who's a council member, he looks pretty young. He's 50, and Anzade's 54. There's a lawyer, D. Kelly Jr., who's 60, who is said to have started gathering financial support. which obviously that's a lot younger than our either presidential candidate we had was. But one thing that Mayor Price has done well in her time as mayor is that outside of this past year where I think that she maybe went a little MAGA, she has done a very good job at making like rational decisions regardless of what side that decision might be viewed as favorable towards. She's made plenty of decisions that protect people and are more left-leaning. She's also made plenty of decisions that are protect companies and are a little bit more right-leaning. I think she's done a very good job up until this past year of being a centrist. And we'll say that outside of her support of the Police Officers Association and the support she receives from them. So I think that is very interesting for whomever gets to replace her. I think that that's really important for being able to gather support. We know it's going to be a close race. In 2018, she beat Deborah Peoples by like 7,000 votes, maybe. I mean, we had like 6% voter turnout.
Yeah, it was only like 50,000 people.
Yeah.
With the average age being like 66 or something.
Yeah.
And our average Fort Worth population is 41.
And so if we can start to push younger people to vote, realistically, we know what way that's going to lean. Is it enough to offset? The funding is obviously a big piece because, the Police Officers Association is going to throw $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 at whoever they think is going to protect their interests. I think it's going to be very interesting come January 12th to see who immediately throws their name in the ring. Realistically, I think that a lot of people are going to wait to see what Mayor Price and what Miss Peoples decide to do, and then decide if they want to take a crack at it from there.
I think looking at it as well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we take how did Tarrant County and Fort Worth handle the coronavirus situation, right? I mean, we're currently, we broke reports again, another high record this Saturday with 3,361 new coronavirus cases and ICU capacity at 99%. So we're kind of ignoring all of this, right? But I do think because what Tarrant County as a whole has been able to do around the businesses and the economy, people are actually, I don't even know. I might even grade. I don't know what your grade would be on how we handled everything through like balancing coronavirus and the economy. I'm giving us probably a B-, B+, like because of we health wise we might be dropping the ball, but the balance of keeping everything on the rails, that's what made this hard, right? The yin and yang of what was the right thing to do. I don't know how you would grade it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've obviously seen, and I think most people could predict that, like California's like all-in restriction wasn't going to work because people have homes and they just gather in their homes, and we're learning more and more that is the top spreader of the virus. Obviously there's some selection bias there because if that's the only place you can meet, then that's obviously going to be the place where it spreads. I mean, I think that the city did a good job mobilizing funds to get it to small businesses, especially the second time around. The first time around, I don't think anybody knew about it, which I was happy to take advantage of. But I do think that it's done a fairly good job. I think that trying to attract something like the National Finals Rodeo was probably a misstep. That money wasn't the money coming into Fort Worth is like going into those stockyards businesses. And that's such a small, like that wasn't, to me, that wasn't a good investment for the city because it is not money that's going to spread throughout the economy well, if that makes sense. What it did spread was COVID. And I think just like seeing a little buzz on Twitter over the last week, it was like everybody I know who went to a national finals rodeo event has gotten COVID or started to show symptoms. Yeah. So I think that I would smack a pretty big like D- onto that. And that brings the grade down to maybe like a C. Yeah. But yeah, how are people going to react and mobilize around that? The other piece is that a majority of Fort Worth school board seats and Tarrant Regional Water District seats are also going to be up for election. How do people respond to how the school board handled the whole virtual versus in person? I think we know, and we got to talk to Dr. Krochmal about it, that the loudest voices in the room were not huge fans of how they handled it. But overall, I would say that they communicated well, and that they made science-based decisions, which can't be said for a large portion of the country. Yeah. So, yeah, how do people react to that as well? Yeah.
And if you're hearing sounds in the back, it's we're at the Casa, and the Casa's being some construction at the Casa. So speaking of investing in Fort Worth and staying around, we are that's the house. You know, it's funny that we're talking about real estate today, and we can hear real estate noises and construction. But anyways, I apologize for that. But I also think you gave it a D- on the rodeo. We're very obviously different than I think most. Like, I think when you look at when we're all shocked that 74 million. You know, what was it? How many? 72 million people voted for Trump.
Yeah.
That is like, that's because like that's Fort Worth. We don't necessarily care about police stuff, right? Yeah. We're not really, we don't care about that. We want our freedoms when it comes to like the mask stuff. Like so I don't know. I think Betsy still, if she runs, has a pretty clear shoe in to continue to do her thing, which again, I don't mind. Like, I don't mind, but I'm also excited to see who else is going to kind of provide a different vision and get people excited.
Yeah, so the election is May 1st, and we will definitely have plenty of coverage of that leading up to then. So just something to look forward to this year. And speaking of looking forward, we're going to get into our wins and losses, but we're also going to include a bold prediction for Fort Worth this year. Do you want to kick us off with a win?
Yes. So my win will be that, you know, the vaccinations are going, that's happening. Tarrant County is, our public officials are like Glenn Whitley. They're going out and showcasing the importance of it. I think that's really big. But I think if you're 65 years older or over the age of 16 with an underlying health condition, definitely go to the website and check out the website, which is a crazy website, but I'll put the link in the description so that you can check it out. But you can literally qualify, see what locations. You might also know more about that, but I think that is super cool. I know you could say it's a loss that we haven't distributed it that well, and that there's some like getting spoiled like milk in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a win that Fort Worth hasn't made a headline for having a major, excuse my language, fuck up with this so far.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we're seeing all over the place. Even in New York, Governor Cuomo's trying to make it a $1 million fine if a place accidentally vaccinates somebody who should not have been vaccinated yet.
Yep.
That's nuts.
Yep.
There's stories going around in Israel, which has been an example of like rocket ship taking off, vaccinating people, of doses being close to expiring and nurses literally just running into the street and like, I see, like, you are a human being, like, come here, I'm sticking this in you. So just interesting to see the contrast there. It definitely hasn't been a smooth rollout. I know that JPS is distributing the Moderna vaccine. I'm not sure what Tarrant County Public Health has. Expect to, especially if you're going through Tarrant County Public Health, expect to wait a little bit once you're there. But no matter how long the line seems, the feedback has been that it's moving pretty quickly. So if you walk up and you're like, wow, it looks like I'm going to be here for 3 hours. A lot of people have been reporting like 30 minutes to 65 minutes. So,
and what do you think though? Like, I also think like, imagine the pressure, right? Hospitals are now having to become like little logistics companies.
Oh yeah.
You know, like this is not like they're, you know, they talked about there was how Arlington had the esports stadium and the firefighters distributed. It feels like firefighters are like our distribution guys when it comes to city groups. But you know, like I also feel like this is a big responsibility, and maybe it's like I kind of think about it's, you know, teachers' responsibility to get, you know, online education right.
Yeah.
When you've never done it before.
Yeah.
Like also think like, you know, I also kind of empathize with the kind of that. But yeah, no, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I empathize, but also we knew this was coming and we had time to prepare for it. And Operation Warp Speed has turned into Operation Derp Speed. Like we didn't prepare for the logistics of this.
Yeah.
And that's another major failure. Hopefully we catch up. The vaccines are out there. We just have to figure out how to inform people. And that's maybe even more so than the logistics piece of it. The communication piece of it has been very poor. And so I would urge you that if you feel like you qualify, whether that's because you are a frontline worker, over the age of 65 or 16 plus and have an underlying health condition, like take the initiative and go for it. Because I think that's the major issue, is that because we have failed so much on communicating who, where, and how, people are just sort of waiting for that information to come out. Even though it's out there, it just isn't being widely projected.
I mean, just look at this like website link that they have promoting around. It's like www.tcph.quick-base.com/BQ3Q4UET8. Like these are little things.
The
like,
website should be www.tarrantcountycovidvaccine.com.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just needs to, these are like, I think always the challenges, when like you don't have, just marketing and business experience, but even that's like government, like that's where government kind of always feels like struggles, you know. I think it's in hospitals and stuff like that, but no, would you take this as a win? The, save our stages and like kind of like all that. How do you feel? I mean, I know New Year's we had, like people try to have parties, New Year's parties is like, oh, we're done with 2020. And like, it's like, not really, but I see people still doing their New Year's thing.
Yeah. I feel like I didn't see a ton of New Year's stuff happening.
I agree.
Maybe that's because I didn't want to see it. So maybe that's a win. We'll have to see what the Christmas and New Year's peaks do to us. Yeah.
Cool.
I would say, okay, so this is just a fun little win. Fort Worth has a chef on this season of Hell's Kitchen. Jordan Savell is, the show premieres on Fox on January 7th for its 19th season. And earlier this year, she was filming in Vegas with Gordon Ramsay. Soon she'll be rolling out her own food truck called Bullish Foods, which will serve classic sandwiches with chef-inspired twists. This is a really exciting thing for me. One, because I love cooking shows and cooking competition shows, but two, because I feel like between her, someone who used to work for Melt was on Chopped recently. Chef Ben Merritt from Ben's Triple B and Fixture was on One Chopped maybe like 18 months ago, or the episode aired maybe 18 months ago now. I am a foodie. I love the restaurant experience. And so it is very exciting for me to see Fort Worth maybe make this transition from having entrepreneur driven restaurants to chef driven restaurants. And to me, the difference there, chef driven restaurants don't have to have a bad aesthetic, but it's very clear when you walk into a place if it is driven by the quality of food or driven by if you're going to post it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting for me to see Fort Worth dive more into these chef-driven places, these really experiential restaurant places. And so I'm excited in 2021 to at some point be able to try a lot of these places, but it's really fun for me to see another Fort Worth chef get on the map.
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. And I think going out to eat, that's probably one of the biggest things we're all missing right now. So I think and I also, you can't fake care, and you can easily, and whatever you do, what the person cares about.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a restaurant that they're trying to franchise, make more franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a restaurant that's trying to be Instagram cool.
Yeah.
This is a restaurant that they love to make highest quality of food, and it's a way of expression. So I totally would love more of that in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to losses. My loss, I'll go state loss. Who stays in the L category? Mr. Senator Ted Cruz, who is one who won't certify the Electoral College votes that cement Biden's wins. He's being a lead kind of person, just kind of leading the mic and being verbal about it. And so, one, I think he's obviously very smart because he knows how to be very manipulative to his group. And now that Trump is kind of going to the wayside, he's kind of next on the hate list and going to be very important for Texas. I don't know. They also, who knows what's going to happen there, because he has a while still. But then you also have, there's people talked about even Beto with Abbott competing there. That seems interesting. So I don't know. Anyways, big L for, Cornyn sat in, right?
Yeah.
Declined a stimulus of $2,000 when their boy
good old
Trump said to do it. I don't know why.
Good old Ted. Yeah. And so maybe to relieve some stress about this, this has happened before. It has happened before where senators have stood up and said, I want to protest certifying the election. Nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter. It's an all fluff for show thing. This is the first time that it has garnered the amount of news support and news amplification that this has. And obviously that falls into the category of this entire ruse around fake news and the election not being fair. But a number of these people who are going to stand up and say that they don't support the election were on those ballots, and they just know that people don't care about that. They know that the oxymoron of them doing this does not matter to their constituency, which that's sad in and of itself. It's sad that so many people support Ted Cruz going along with a ruse like this. So it's one of those things. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. It's just annoying that it's getting this much news cycle when it is not a noteworthy thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just crazy how much people are on the copy Trump train. They've seen it work. And people are scared to fall off. Their biggest fear is getting a tweet from Trump saying something bad about them. And that's so crazy, the amount of power one guy can have on you. Yeah.
I was reading from a constitutional lawyer that for this to actually go down, if we got so far away from democracy that something like this actually held weight, we would already be in the middle of a civil war. Yeah. So if that's gives any comfort to this not making a difference.
Yep.
But yeah, the Republican Party is not turning back to I think a lot of people like held out this idea that once Trump was gone, they would sort of throw this all away. But I think we're seeing more and more that if there are conservative minded people who want to live by the ideals of the former Republican Party, they're going to have to form a new party.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah. People have been asking for a third party for forever. So, I would say my loss, I'll stick to COVID. Like we're putting up some big numbers and they're only going to get bigger. There's been like nationally, there's been an ever so slight decline in cases and deaths over the past like week, but that's really just because we hit the period after Thanksgiving where we'd hit the peak of the Thanksgiving bump of cases. Now we're going through the cycle of we're going to hit the Christmas and New Year's cycle of cases followed by deaths. And so, the only way you're getting an ICU bed in Fort Worth right now is when somebody dies, which is a really sad and somber thing.
What's your thoughts on the new variants of COVID coming out?
I don't think that. Scientists are saying that it is noteworthy just in that we're going to have to figure out how to treat it maybe slightly differently. But I was reading a scientist this morning who was saying that it doesn't seem to cause any more extreme versions of the disease. And it also will be the vaccine will still have efficacy over it.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's
I did see that.
It's just one of those things to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I did see that. It spreads faster.
Yeah.
But then as well as it's actually more common in people under 20 or something like that.
Oh,
like
interesting.
Like there's a younger crowd to the variant.
Interesting.
But no, let's go to predictions. And we'll close off with predictions. Thank you for checking out the 817 podcast, by the way. Make sure you subscribe, share with a friend. We are just, young creatives, entrepreneurs here in Fort Worth who love our city, who continue to just read the news and consume what we feel like is important for us to share with other people in our space. So thank you for doing that. Do you want to go first on your prediction?
Sure, I'll go first. My prediction will be that regardless of if Betsy Price runs or not, Fort Worth will have a Democratic affiliated mayor elected. I think that there are enough people who are passionate about mobilizing and not being known as the largest city in the country with a Republican mayor. Between the handling of COVID, or even just like COVID happening, like it's going to fall on the responsibility, regardless of if you handled it anything other than like an A+. Plus the handling of the police force, especially over last summer. I think that I would love to see it be Deborah Peoples if she chooses to run. I also really like, from what I've seen in city council meetings, what Anzade adds. So I think either of them I would be really excited about, and I'm going to predict that one of them wins.
Yeah, I think, that I love it. I think these are bold predictions, and I don't know. I think what's really tough is because Fort Worth is so small, a lot of the people who are young influencers in Fort Worth has been supported by Betsy, and doing events or stages and being kind of in the same pictures. I mean, there's a lot of artists, a lot of celebrities, and like I think it's going to be tough for a lot of young or influential people to step away from that feeling already connected to the bones that have been thrown.
Yeah,
to support them. I think that's going to be a big kicker in that happening. My big bold prediction is that a big California business is going to move to Fort Worth.
Like how big?
I will go, like 500 employees big.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll go 500 employees big. We'll move to Fort Worth this year and allow us to start getting some of that innovative emerging technology kind of businesses. And so that's my thing there.
Good thing that we've got all these apartments built for them.
Yes, that is correct. And but yeah, no, I'm also wondering, like, a part of me was like, school is not going to go back to in person. I think that I think it really, how bad this that would come down to two things. That would come down to how well we get these vaccines out.
Yeah.
To if the variants of the COVID of these things are showing that it's happening in younger people, if that becomes more of a thing, if those two things, if we fail at distribution and there's an expansion on the variant that it's more impacting young people, specifically, I think you could always go like K through 5 back or whatever, but I'm talking like middle and high school, which will be awful. We need to get back to school, but I think I fear that being a continued nightmare.
Very interesting. And we'll dive into it more another time because I think it's even more interesting with the May 1st election of new school board officials, how that plays into it too.
Yep.
So thanks everyone for listening. Starting off 2021 strong with us. We're looking forward to continuing to cover everything that's going to be happening in the 817 this year. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Later.
Cause I do what I gotta to get where I'm going.